The morning was slow and gentle, like most mornings in the beach house. Sunlight slipped through the thin white curtains, stretching soft gold lines across the wooden floor. I moved quietly from room to room, my slippers making small sounds against the boards my husband had repaired with his own tired hands years ago. This house was never just wood and nails. It was breath. It was love. It was survival. I stood at the kitchen sink, washing an old teacup with faded blue flowers painted on its side. My hands were wrinkled now, spotted with age, but they still remembered how to care for things gently. Outside, the waves whispered their endless story, the same song they had been singing since my daughter was a child. I once held her on this very porch. I rocked her to sleep while the sea breeze brushed her soft hair. I remember thinking back then, nothing could ever break us. The phone rang. I dried my hands slowly, like my body already sensed danger. The phone felt heavy when I lifted it. Heavier than it used to. "Hello," I said softly. Her voice hit me like a cold door slamming shut. "Mom, we're leaving tomorrow. Your beach house has already been sold. Bye." For a second I thought I must have misheard. My ears were old, yes, but my heart was not mistaken. "Sold," I repeated, barely breathing. She sounded bored, almost irritated. "Yes, sold. There's no point explaining. You'll need to pack." My hand tightened around the phone. The room felt suddenly too large and too empty. "But I built this home," I whispered, more to myself than to her. The line went quiet. Then click. She was gone. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I just stood there, staring at the wall, as if my soul had stepped out of my body and forgotten to come back. Every corner of the house began to ache inside my chest. There was the mark on the door where her height was measured with pencil lines. There was the sofa where my husband used to fall asleep mid-sentence. There were the seashells in a cracked glass bowl, collected from years of walking the shore together. This place was my life, and she had sold it like it was nothing. My legs felt weak as I lowered myself into the old wooden chair by the table. I pressed my hand against my mouth, trying to hold my heart inside my chest where it belonged. So this is how it ends, I thought. Not with love, not with gratitude, but with a short phone call. Outside, the ocean kept moving. I did not know my world had cracked open. I stared out the window and felt something unfamiliar rise quietly in me. Not anger, not screaming rage, but a slow burning realization. She thought I was helpless. She thought I was just a grandmother waiting. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window listening to the waves, remembering every sacrifice, every late night, every quiet prayer I had whispered for my daughter's future. And as the moonlight covered the floor, I felt the first small shift inside my heart. This was not the end. This was the beginning. The night carried a strange kind of silence, deeper than the sound of the waves, heavier than the wind. I sat alone at the small kitchen table, the same one where my daughter once spilled milk and cried as if her world had ended. The wooden surface was worn down by years of love and use, but it was still strong. Unlike her. I wrapped my fingers around a cup of cold tea, but I couldn't taste it. My mind drifted backward, not to pain but to clarity. Years ago, when my husband's laughter still echoed through the hallways and his boots still rested by the door, I had walked into a small law office on a quiet street. No one knew. Not even him. I hadn't gone because I didn't love them. I went because I finally learned something hard. Love should never make you powerless. The lawyer had looked at me gently over his glasses. "Are you sure?" he asked. I had nodded without hesitation. "Yes," I said. "I may be old, but I am not invisible." Back in the present, the phone sat quietly beside me, like it was waiting. I could almost feel the storm building on the other end of the line. She would call back. I knew she would. Not out of care, but out of confusion. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for the phone and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, already annoyed. "What now?" she asked. My voice surprised even me. It was calm. Not shaking. Not broken. "But you forgot one thing," I said softly. There was a pause. "What are you talking about?" Her tone shifted, sharper now. Defensive. I leaned back in the chair and let my eyes close for a moment. All the paperwork came back to me, every careful signature, every slow, precise step. The trust. The protected ownership. The name I signed that no one remembered anymore. The name of the woman I was before I gave everything away. I'm talking about the papers you never saw, I told her. The ones you assumed didn't exist. She scoffed, but I could hear the small crack in her voice. You're confused, Mom. Everything was handled. That's when it happened. A laugh rose from my chest. Not loud, not cruel, but real. The kind of laugh that belongs to someone who finally remembers their strength. Oh, sweetheart, I said slowly, smiling into the empty kitchen. You can sell a story, but you can't sell what you don't own. Silence. I imagined her face on the other side. Confused, irritated, maybe a little scared. And for the first time in years I wasn't afraid of her. She hung up without another word. I sat there in the quiet again, but it no longer felt like loneliness. Felt like control. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the walls of the house like old hands. I walked through each room slowly, touching the door frames, the shelves, the small cracks in the walls that held more memories than people ever could. This home was not just mine by law. It was mine by soul. And whatever storm was coming next, I was ready. The morning came softly, as if unaware of the storm that was growing inside this quiet little house. The sun touched the curtains gently, and the sound of the waves carried on, steady and patient. I moved through the kitchen making tea with slow, careful hands, but inside me everything was alert. This was not the kind of revenge that shouts. This was the kind that whispers. I had no plans for anger. No plans to destroy my daughter's world. That kind of revenge is loud and ugly and leaves scars that never heal. I had already lived long enough to know that bitterness tastes good only for a moment, but then it poisons everything it touches. No, my revenge would be quiet, dignified, unforgettable. By noon, a white car pulled into the driveway. 2 men stepped out, carrying clipboards and folders thick with expectation. They walked through my front gate like strangers entering a story that did not belong to them. Good morning, one of them said. We're here to inspect the property. New owners. I smiled politely and stepped aside. Of course. They walked through the rooms, measuring walls, tapping windows, writing notes. Each sound felt like someone tapping on my heart, but I didn't let it show. I offered them tea. I listened. I watched. And then came the knock at the door that mattered. My lawyer arrived just as the men were finishing their reports. He was calm, dressed neatly, carrying a briefcase that was heavier than it looked. He greeted them with a simple nod. We'll need to stop the process. The men frowned. Why? He opened the briefcase and placed the documents on the table. The air changed. They read. They scanned. They stopped smiling. I stood by the window silently, watching the ocean as if nothing unusual was happening behind me. That was my favorite part of revenge, not watching someone fall, but watching them slowly realize they were standing on ground that never belonged to them. The sale froze. The phone rang. I didn't rush to answer it. I let it sit there and cry for me. When I finally picked up, her voice was no longer sharp. It was shaking. Mom, what did you do? She whispered. I stepped outside onto the porch, letting the sea air touch my face. I didn't do anything new, I replied gently. I just protected what I built a long time ago. There was a long pause. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the coldness of her voice. The way she said bye like I was something she had finished using. I didn't mean to hurt you, she added quietly. I looked at the horizon. The waves rolled in like slow, steady breathing. I know, I said. But the truth was, I didn't know. And I didn't need to. That evening I sat on the porch with my warm cup of tea, listening to the waves like they were applauding a victory only I understood. But it wasn't joy I felt. It was relief. For the first time in years I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like something that could be moved, sold, or erased. I felt like a woman again. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. The house was quiet the next morning, but it wasn't an empty kind of quiet. It felt full of breath, of memory, of something unfinished that had been waiting for years. I was sitting by the window, knitting slowly, when I heard the soft sound of footsteps on the path outside. The gate creaked. Someone hesitated at the door before knocking. I already knew who it was. I didn't rush to open it. Some lessons need a moment to settle in the heart. When I finally did open the door, she stood there like a stranger wearing the face of my child. Her shoulders were tense, Her eyes red, and the confidence she once carried so carelessly had been replaced by something fragile. "Mom," she whispered, as if saying the word might break it. I stepped aside and let her walk in. She moved through the living room like someone walking through a ghost, touching the walls, looking at the shelves, noticing things she used to ignore. She stopped by the old pencil marks on the door frame. "I forgot," she said, her voice barely holding together. "I forgot how much of you is in this house." I folded my hands in front of me. "You didn't forget," I said gently. "You just stopped looking." She broke then. Tears fell freely, heavy and honest. She covered her mouth like she was trying to push the sound of regret back down her throat. But it was too late. It had been too late for a long time. "I thought you were just waiting," she said through her tears. "Waiting for me to take over. I didn't think you'd fight back." I walked slowly toward her. My steps were not angry. They were not sharp. They were careful. "I wasn't waiting," I said softly. "I was living." The silence between us changed. It softened. She looked at me, really looked at me for perhaps the first time in years. Not just as a mother. Not just as a grandmother. But as a woman. "I don't deserve forgiveness," she whispered. I thought about that. She was right. She didn't. But forgiveness isn't always about what people deserve. Sometimes it's about what we deserve. Peace, rest, freedom from carrying anger like a heavy stone in the heart. I opened my arms. She froze. Then slowly, carefully, like someone stepping onto thin ice, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. Her body shook. So did mine. But it wasn't pain shaking through us. It was release. Outside, the ocean moved as it always had. It had seen our worst days, our best days, and everything in between. That evening, we sat on the porch together. No long speeches. No excuses. Just tea. Just silence. Just breathing. The house was still mine. Not because of documents. Not because of lawyers. Not because of victory. But because I finally understood something important. Love does not mean weakness. Forgiveness does not erase boundaries. And strength does not need to be loud. I am a grandmother. I am a mother. But most of all, I am a woman who remembered herself. And that was my real ending.